Hello and welcome to another episode of the Jacked and Lean on our 10 Minutes podcast. The podcast is designed to bring you maximum information in a condensed period of time so you can get on your way to being jacked and lean. Today we have another Q&A episode, one that is more nutrition focused. So we dropped the box in our gym, had our members ask us some questions, and these are a few of the nutrition ones that I pulled from the box. I'm excited to do this one. Obviously, I'm ripping it solo today, but let's get to it. Oh, I even have my handy timer here to make sure I stay in my 10-minute promise. All right, question number one. For cutting, do you prefer a slow and steady approach or an aggressive approach? What situations would be appropriate for each? Fantastic question, and one that obviously has a ton of nuance. Not something I can cover entirely in this short time span, and that's exactly why I exist as a coach, but I'm going to try to give you guys some practical answers here. Remember, this is all relative. Fast, slow, it's all relative. Someone that is 300 pounds and has a lot of weight to lose, that's going to be able to lose at a faster rate than someone who weighs 200 pounds or 120 pounds. In general, 1% of your body weight per week is like a pretty solid number. For those of you that know like dieting metrics, early on, we're probably losing like 1.5%, maybe a little bit higher per week. The meat of your fat loss is going to be probably around that 1% per week. And it might creep below that a little bit, like the end of a contest prep or end of a fat loss phase. So let's just say 1% to help give you guys some context here. 1% per week. If you weigh 300 pounds, that's 3 pounds. If you weigh 200 pounds, that's 2 pounds per week. If you're 150 pounds, it's 1.5 pounds per week, all within like the reasonable realm of weight loss. So what is aggressive? What is slow and steady? This is going to be kind of coming down to the situation that the person has in front of them and the client that I have in front of me. So let's say someone is set up well for fat loss. Stress is low. They have the ability to make some large scale habit changes with their food and their cardio and their training, and they're like mentally ready to do what it takes, and they weigh 300 pounds. We could probably move them pretty aggressively. Someone who is in the same exact situation in terms of the same body fat percentage, but is not mentally, emotionally, or in other ways ready for that fat loss phase, I probably got to move them a little bit slower because we have to implement the habit change and do yada, 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 right? So that already is going to create a fast versus slower approach. Someone might have a shorter timeline for like a contest prep. I might have to lose a little bit more aggressively. So the rate I go is always based on the person in front of me and what they can handle. My answer to this is going to be simple then. I would make fat loss happen at as fast of a rate as you can handle reasonably, knowing that things might change even from your one fat loss phase to another fat loss phase. Well, I lost fat better when I tried to push it harder. Well, maybe in between the time from when you did it slower, you fixed some health stuff. You were more bought into the process. You had better habits. So all these things set you up for a more effective and therefore efficient fat loss phase, and one that you can handle that was more aggressive. So I don't like to be very black and white with these things. If someone's set up well for fat loss, I like to try to move them as quickly as I can, obviously, right? If someone is just not set up well for it, I'll definitely move them a little bit slower. All right, second question. When first starting in the gym, should you prioritize diet over training? Obviously, both matter, right? Again, I don't like being black and white. Gun to my head, if I had to choose one, I would say diet for sure. There's so many issues that I try to fix primarily through food. And we even have literature that if you're a very untrained person, you've never really worked out in your life, if you were to stand up on a treadmill and do cardio, you would build some lower body muscle mass. So you combine that with a diet that's really dialed in, you're set up well to see some really solid results. So when you're first starting out, as this question asks, 1,000% prioritize diet. Training obviously matters. And you can say, well, Jack, if I build more muscle mass, I'm going to have a higher metabolic rate. I'm going to be able to lose fat easier. I get the metabolic benefits of having more muscle mass, but realistically, you're not going to burn nearly as many calories through training as you will through a really well-structured deficit. Training burns calories. Diet, you can eat less than you can burn through exercise, especially since there's a fatigue component to training more to make up that burn. That's a big issue I see. You can basically make up for some lack of exercise with more diet though, okay? So I would say definitely prioritize diet, especially with what I see from a functional health perspective, just how much of your habits, dietary wise affects things downstream. Your metabolism really governs everything. All right, and question 3. We hear it all the time, but people don't realize that you're not going to lose weight by eating a salad. Please talk about eating salads, the pros and cons. I like this question. It's one that's really practical And again, I like to leave you guys with practical answers. So I'll break it down for you. When people start their diet, they go, I'm going to start eating salads. Salads are healthy, right? And they start eating lots and lots of salads. They replace all their other bad food. And sometimes it definitely works because there could be a lot less calorie intake that comes from a really well structured salad versus burgers and fries. What I see oftentimes, though, is two things. Number one, someone does not eat very well structured salads, and they have like bacon bits and all these different, dressings on there, and cheese and seeds and yada yada yada. And now it becomes a conflated meal, and that can very easily creep up to a higher calorie amount or similar to that burger and fries. And so, number one issue is that you don't actually have like healthy salads. You go to like a steakhouse or a Clive's Roadhouse, American Grill and Bar type place, and you get the big chef salad, all the junk on it. Like, you're not going to see much better results than if you had just eaten maybe less of the burger and fries, right? The second issue I see regarding salads is that someone starts to, as they're dieting, eat less calories. They start to get hungry. They don't know how to quite handle the hunger psychologically, not understanding that's just part of the process. They start backfilling that like hunger with salads. Well, salads are healthy. I'm just going to eat like raw lettuce and raw vegetables. And I see that cause digestive issues over time. And primarily it comes down to the fact that the person can't handle like being hungry. They're not okay with like that psychological work it takes to be like, I am okay not eating. I know this is part of the process. And a whole nother thing I'll talk about later on is how I think people need to be hungry a little more often, especially if you're dealing with digestive issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But people ultimately just eat too much salad and then they'll have digestive issues. Raw vegetables in general are a little bit harder for people to digest. So pros of salads here: they can be less calories than other foods, right? They're pretty accessible at like restaurants if you're someone who has to go out to eat a lot, and so then therefore, like when done properly, like they can be effective for fat loss. Cons of salads, though, is number one, when done poorly, they can be really bad. And two, you can just consume too many of them in too high a volume of raw vegetables in general, and then you can have some digestive issues. So, like as personally in my coaching business, I don't write a lot of salads into plans. I tend to lean towards other vegetables, and even then, I'm not like super heavy on vegetables. I like to lean into other types of foods like fruits and meats and eggs and stuff. And then obviously, like if you have a salad in there, it's not going to hurt you. I just don't think they're like the holy grail of weight loss. But again, I don't like the red pen things. I don't like to say good versus bad. It's not bad or good. It's just always context dependent. All right, guys, that's it for these. I enjoyed these couple questions here. So we will be opening up more opportunities for you to input your questions. I like giving you guys really practical answers you can take away, apply to your clients, apply to your own training, whatever it may be. So stay tuned for the next episode of the Jackson in our 10 Minutes podcast.